You're listening to another episode of the Choose to Think podcast. About once a month, I step away from our routine and scout out a local shining star. In today's episode, if you don't know him, you'll meet Ken Glass, the pharmacist and owner of Railroad Drug in Midway, Kentucky. And you are in for a treat. When you walk into Railroad Drug, it's like walking into your grandma's house. There are racks of candy, a fridge full of cold drinks, and ice cream. The atmosphere drips with nostalgia and warm vibes, from the black and white checkered floor and the red-topped stools at the counter to the ancient and, might I say, giant apothecary records book on display in the back. Ken and his wife Amanda have created an ambiance that both welcomes and serves. It's a delicious mix of past and present. You may just walk out the door thinking you are the most important person in the world by the way you're treated. It is truly health care at its finest. The interview was conducted live in the store during business hours, so occasionally you may hear Ken greet a customer or two. You might just hear the phone ringing, someone being served at the soda fountain up front, or the faint whistle of the train as it chugs down Main Street. I loved everything about this interview. It's been both the hardest and the easiest to conduct. Easy, well, because it's Ken. Hard, because he shared so much awesomeness that I had no idea what to cut. Now, disclosure, 2 of my sons have worked with Ken in the shop, as we call it. You'll hear him talk about Getty during the interview. Let's just say that my mother's heart just about busted with pride. Stay tuned toward the end, because although Ken is extraordinary, wait till you hear what he says about faith and family. And say, if you have a moment, please rate, share, and write a review for me. Your words of encouragement are so valuable. I also have a listener support tab, just in case you would consider donating to help others learn about God and His Word and find inspiration and hope in their journey to choose to think. We're going to jump right into this conversation. Ken had already tuned me in on his background, telling me how he was born and raised in Round County. As a matter of fact, his dad owned and operated the original Dairy Queen there in downtown Moorhead. Ken graduated from UK with a pharmacy degree and later went on to work for both chain pharmacies as well as an independently owned store. He's a huge UK fan, by the way. Now, he arrived to a point in his career where he found himself struggling with the inevitable chain store push for increased revenue, and he longed to offer clients a more personalized and meaningful experience. He and his wife Amanda had moved to Midway, and it was on a stroll downtown that his heartstrings were getting pulled big time. Ken started with a vision, and 10 years later, his vision is a bustling and integral component of our beautiful town of Midway. I'm going to let the various clips play, and I'll meet you on the other side with my higher ground takeaways. Come on into Railroad Drug, have a seat, and let's listen.
One summer, I guess it was probably 2009, I was pushing my 2-year-old son, Caden, who's now 12, I was pulling him in an old wagon, and like a one of those radio flyer wagons. So I was pulling him in one of those, and we live up the hill, and so we came down here, and we're pulling through town here, and I passed by this old building, and I'd always known it was here because it had been empty for a long time. And I would always kind of stop and look in the window, and I could see in my head, imagining this soda fountain here, and a pharmacy way in the back. The building's really big, and I just thought, that would be so neat. And I can't tell you how many times I would stop and look in here, and it had been for sale for a long time. And one night I was laying there, and Amanda, my wife, was beside me, and I said, that old building is for sale down there. I said, I would love to put an old pharmacy and the old soda fountain in that. And she was like, you should do that. And I'm like, are you crazy? We haven't saved any money for that. We at the time she was still driving to Louisville to work. And, we were in the middle of the recession, kind of was starting the housing recession and all that. So nobody was wanting to lend. And I thought, there's no way. And so ironically, as the weeks kind of went on, I just felt a very big draw, a very big pull to kind of look into that. And when I started Railroad Drug, I wanted, I kind of took what I knew from the parts that I liked about working, the parts that I thought worked well at a chain store versus the personal touch of the independent that I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I worked for him, I just noticed the difference in the way that he interacted with his clientele. He knew them, they knew them. It was very informal. And that's something that I actually didn't mention before, but I noticed that he would come in some days in a Tommy Bahama shirt and flip-flops, and which sounds so unprofessional,
Mm-hmm.
but his personal touch with his customers was, I still have never known a pharmacist that had that much trust from his customer base. Because when you think about it, when I stand there in a white coat, to some people, they see professional. To other people, they're intimidated. They feel like they think that I think I'm better than them.
Mm-hmm.
I have a doctorate. You're taking up my time. That feeling, even though that's not the way I feel, it's a persona that gives off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I want to put my white coat on and be around other pharmacists or other doctors or whatever, that's one thing. But that's not the experience that I want you to have when you come in here. I want you to come in here, but before you ever even make it to the counter, I want somebody, if it's not me, somebody else greeting you by your first name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that informal experience because if it's informal, if it's personal,
Mm-hmm.
If it's intimate, it has that feeling of, it makes you feel important, and you feel that way because you are important. You do matter to me. And that's a twofold thing. One is, you're my customer. You are letting me give you a service that you could give to 8 other pharmacies in this county.
Right.
But you're trusting me with that, or me with your kid's prescription or whatever. And I don't take that lightly. In addition to that, I also want you to know that not do I just want your business, but I'm your neighbor. Like, I live here. This is my town too. And I want to know you, and I want to know about you, and I know about your kids, because when I go once a year up there to the occupation thing, and I sit in a room and different classes of kids come in, and they know me as Mr. Ken at the ice cream store. Like, I want that feeling. And, I think when you talk about that personal touch, that's so important. I feel like to try to be able to do that, which is kind of the, ambiance of railroad drug when you come in here anyway. It's the feeling of the building, the feeling of the staff. Hey, man, how are you? Good. And then, but yet to be able to still functionally do all of the things that a big chain can do, whether it's electronic prescribing or compounding or vaccines or whatever that is, we're going to be able to do that for you.
Flu shots.
Absolutely. Flu shots, pneumonia shots, shingles vaccines when I can get it. Home place at Midway has been and still continues to be a very integral part of railroad drug. And that exists on a couple of different levels. Bye, gal. Bring the sun with you next time you come, will you?
It's spitting something. I don't know what, but it's Kentucky.
Right.
So if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
Right. Very true. So, I feel the home place has been really a phenomenal addition, first of all, to this community. This community has needed that. And to say that that's the most impressive nursing home in the state of Kentucky is an understatement. It is. There is nothing like it. The patient experience there is so unique. Each building has 12 beds with a gourmet kitchen and their own nurse and a fully staffed building. When people go to nursing homes, whether it be to admit a loved one or just to go volunteer or whatever, it's not the nicest concept. It is a very sad place to go. It's usually pretty dreary. Sometimes has an odor. It just has that, from the second you walk in there, hey guys, from the second you walk into that, you have this feeling of, I just don't see Johnny. Have a good day, buddy.
You too.
You have this feeling of dread.
Mm-hmm.
The home place is not that way. When you go in there, lots of natural light, lots of pretty colors. Something's cooking in the kitchen in a gourmet pot that smells great, and there's Frank Sinatra playing on a radio, and it is just, it it is something to behold as a healthcare professional that has seen not the nicest of places in the past. It is an amazing place, and it has affected railroad drug, obviously, our bottom line substantially, because long-term care patients are paid in a different way from insurance companies, because we have to do extra things, meaning packing their medications, delivering them, all that kind of stuff. And so traditionally a long-term care pharmacy is compensated for those things. So it's a little more lucrative to get into that part. And so, which makes it nice because you have your community business here, and then you've got a little long-term care business there. And I think something that gets lost in bigger pharmacy is exactly what you said. You're like, I want to know an answer, and I would like to know quicker than not. Whereas here, we want, like I said, we want you to know that we're going to be able to be as professional with you as you would get anywhere else. But we also want you to know that we're not looking at you as a Social Security number. We're not looking at you as a copay. Is your copay what pays my bills? Of course it is. Do I want your copay? Absolutely. I want them all.
Right.
But I also have to answer for that behavior because I'm also your neighbor. If you and I are walking our dogs and crisscross each other on the street, if you don't like me, then that's probably, I'm going to have to answer for that at some point. I don't get to just send you on your merry way and never see you again.
Right.
So, I feel like that railroad drug is a really nice kind of combination of that kind of thing. And the personal touch is, like you see, when people come in here, you've seen it throughout this interview.
Yeah.
I don't really address anybody unless it's somebody that I feel like prefers to be addressed that way. I'm usually calling them by their first name, and they call me by my first name. I don't ask for them to call me Mr. Glass or Dr. Glass. I want them to call me Ken. And because unfortunately, a lot of times we've been here 10 years, so we've seen a lot of patients come here and they've grown older and they've passed away. And I feel like, when we go to their funerals and when I'm there with their families, I feel like I was part of that person's life, not just the person putting the pills in the bottle for them.
You've given such a great description on the nostalgia that's created here, the customer service that's I would say is unparalleled. I mean, even as we're talking, I'm like, I just now got you on such a pedestal. I'm like, Ken Glass. I mean,
you just
come
don't know.
everybody.
You just don't know a lot of pharmacists then, or a lot of good people. That's an unfair compliment.
I mean, I think you're going the extra mile, big time, and mission accomplished in establishing this type of atmosphere.
Amanda and I, have been very blessed in that we have had a phenomenal staff, and I think that, what you try to, I want the staff to feel, I always hated going to work and feeling, I don't know if unhappy is a strong word, but just kind of malcontent. You're just kind of like, ugh. And what I try to tell the people that I work with is, look, like even Zach, right? He's working up here. I spend more time with Zach than I do with my own wife. If I don't like Zach, we're going to have a problem. If I don't like Jessica, we're going to have a problem. If Anthony and I have an issue, we're going to have a problem. I see these people more than I see my own children. They are important to me. They're important to me. Hey, Phil. They're important to me in all that but not on a business level. And I think sometimes that's maybe come back to bite me a little bit, because I think when you have a personal relationship with your employees, there are sometimes some employees that might take advantage of that. But all in all, that has not been the case. And they are just so good, and they work so hard, and I wish I could pay them all $10 more an hour than I pay them now. I just, that's probably one of the most frustrating things when you're an owner, is to want to compensate the help more than the business will allow. It's very, very frustrating. And I feel like that with my entire staff. They are just so great. And I think we talked a little bit about when you talk about the kids that work in the soda fountain, whereas, Jessica and Anthony, and even Zach too, a level of professionalism. They're older. I trust them. If I have to be off, I know that they're taking care of the business and the way it needs to be handled. When you talk about the kids that come in here and we talk about how socially inept they are from when they first get here, whether that be from just constant cell phone use or whatever, they just seem to be lacking in that face-to-face, productive human interaction concept. And so, we really, and by we, I mean me, it's funny. You'll hear, I've heard one of them tell another one, now look, Ken will never get mad at you. But if you don't say hi to people when they walk in and smile, he's going to get upset. And so, because they are the first impression, and I tell them that, people will get the first impression of Railroad Drug from the way that you interact with them. And I don't need it to be formal. I don't need it to be welcome to Railroad Drug. I just need you to look at somebody when they open the door and smile and say, hey, Bob, how's it going? I'll be right with you, and I think that just starts the whole experience off well. And for what we do for a living, I think it's really important because a lot of people, when they come in here, if you come in the soda fountain, that's one thing. Everybody's happy when they're getting ice cream. But when you come to a pharmacy, that either means you feel bad or somebody you love feels bad.
Yeah.
And so you're already in a negative, the connotation is already negative. You're already starting underneath square one.
Right.
And so how do we get somebody from that level to walking out with a smile?
Feeling cared for.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
listened to.
it's, and I think it's everything from, that personal interaction to calling them by name, to respecting their time, to try to get them out efficiently, to being there for them, whether that be, if you need to talk to me now, you're going to have my time. You're not going to have to wait 20 minutes to talk to me. Give me a second. Let me get down the steps. I'll be right there. Or here's my cell phone. If you think of something later, call me. Don't think twice about it. Call me. You have that. I think it's all of those things. I just think it's an accumulation of a lot of those little things together that make people think to themselves, hey, this is all right. Hey, Linda, how are you? I just think that, it is very rewarding. And I think what you see with these young kids is once that develops, and I try to tell them, look, you're not going to be working in a soda fountain your whole life. I mean, if you do, that's great, but you're not going to be. So use this. I need to use you to do this, but you can use this to better what you're going to become. And, it's, you're teaching them that human interaction. It's probably one of the greatest things that I got out of, fraternities catch a really bad rap. But when I was at fraternity, both pharmacy fraternity and then in an undergrad fraternity for a year, the focus is so heavily weighed on how do you interact with your fellow man? How do you make that other, and you're talking about the male to male interaction, but it doesn't have to be a sexist thing. It could be man to woman or woman to woman.
Absolutely.
But when they're teaching you that interaction, it's how can I interact with you that conveys how much I respect you, and you feel that, but commands your respect back. And it's that, and you can do that without making somebody feel inferior. There's a way of doing that. And when you can establish that, that's that trust thing, especially from pharmacist to patient, but it's also from Ken to Victoria. I want you to feel both of those things, because I feel like that will be what obviously helps you to continue coming in here. But of all of my employees, your son has been the most unique, Getty, in that, when he first came to me as this kid, this 17-year-old kid, and he, I had him in the soda fountain, and and he was a little quieter, not socially inept, just kind of that quiet kind of guy, and people just really were drawn to him, and I really noticed that first in the soda fountain, how many people really enjoyed their interaction with Getty, and I would watch him too. And even though he was kind of quiet, he always seems to be he always has his listening ears on. Like he always is soaking in what is going on around him. He's soaking up what you're saying to him. And it makes him very quietly confident. And I knew really early on that intellectual capacity, along with his desire to learn things, was put him in a position that I knew that he needed to be back in the pharmacy and not up here. And from the time that I brought him back there, just, because it's a lot to digest. I mean, it's everything from learning multiple software programs to learning the patient pharmacy interaction to understanding our professional relationships with doctors' offices to which, and again, he's always been so good about trying, when I would try to, it's funny how you can try to teach something, but you can also teach by your actions. And good employees or colleagues will kind of soak up some of, your behaviors that work really well. And so I think once he noticed, one thing is a perfect example is when you talk to nursing staff at a doctor's office, they've been around sick people all day. They've been yelled at. They have been talked down to all day long. And you talk to them and they are not happy. It's like, take a second, laugh with them on the phone, crack a joke, tell them, do something. And what happens there is again, now you have doctor's offices that want to call us, that enjoy that interaction. And we enjoy that interaction with them. They're colleagues of ours. We're not the doctors versus the pharmacists, the nurses versus the pharmacists. We're all on one big team for you. And when you have that, when people call and they're like, hey, Ken, it's Rose. I know Rose is at this doctor's office, and I probably already know who she's calling me about. Like, we know what's going on. And I feel like Getty did such a great job of really soaking up all of that knowledge. And he has been, such a blessing to Amanda and I, because, again, when I'm gone, if I'm off for a day or I'm on vacation and somebody comes in and inevitably if there's an issue or whatever, they say, can I talk to Ken? And they say, Ken's gone. They don't ask for the other pharmacist. They're asking for Getty. Yeah. And Getty, because I think one thing is, one, he obviously knows what he's doing, but two, I think we come back to that very calm demeanor that he has, that very in control. And like I said, at times, if you don't know him, it almost seems apathetic. It almost seems like he doesn't care. But it's just that even keel, steady water, thing. And
steady Getty.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think that absolutely, I think for whoever he works for, or even as his own boss down the road, I think one of his many attributes that will make him successful, I think that one very much ranks up there, because to have an important business, to be your own business owner, that's not for the faint of heart, and it's stressful. And the job we do is very stressful. We handle people's medication all day, and all it takes is to look the other way one time and you've killed somebody. You've given them the wrong medicine. You've killed a toddler.
How do you handle that stress?
It's the longer you work, the more comfortable you get with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I try to tell the staff is, it's like, look, we have our system of checks and balances, and you need to be adherent to those. And if you're not, then I will have an issue. But they're always really good about doing that. But it's definitely, that's how you're taught. You're basically taught, our job isn't, our job is to catch the doctor's mistake, the nurse's mistake, the receptionist's mistake, my own staff's mistakes, and all that stuff. And if I don't catch them all, then you're in danger.
Yeah.
And so it is a little, at times it can be a little stressful.
I think so.
But like, we come back to that chain store mentality. You come in there and they're filling 1,000 prescriptions in a time frame they should only be filling 200. We're way understaffed. And I can promise you those pharmacists feel very uneasy when they go home at night.
Okay, so when you lock the door at the end of the day, and let's say nobody calls you on one night, what do you do?
So I have 3 children, but 2 of my children are still school age, so 12 and 9. So usually when I walk in the door, it's usually supper time. So depending on how hungry they are, I might be eating while they're already almost done, but most of the time they wait for me. Which is nice, because at previous places that I've worked at, that's not always been the case. There are plenty of times where I work at a pharmacy that, closed at like 10, and maybe I don't have, didn't have the time to actually eat with my family. And so that's something I really enjoy. The two things, which would be being able to eat dinner every night with my family and being able to tuck my kids into bed. I feel like it's a very brief period of time in your day that even as a child, I think the things you remember as a kid, you can remember bedtime, you can remember dinner time, and you remember other things too, but I think those are important, to be there when they wake up and to be there when they go to bed if you can. And if you can't, that's understandable too, because I've had those positions as well. But Railroad Drug has afforded me that blessing, and it's one that I'm very thankful for.
We talked about your dad owning the Dairy Queen in Moorhead. Is he still living?
He's not. So he passed away when I was 18.
What would he say about you now? How would he feel about what you're doing right now?
That's a great question. My dad was very Getty-ish. He was very not me, where I'm very chatty. He was not that way. And so very, very reserved, business owner, obviously owned the Dairy Queen. And, I hope I've made him as proud as I possibly could and following kind of in his entrepreneurial footsteps. But, I was 18 when he passed away. He has a heart attack and first one. And so, on some level, I think, so between that and then I actually became a father at 19, 6 months after that, I feel like, I did a lot of growing up really quick, but I don't know that I would wish anything different. I feel like there are people that maybe can take some challenge in life and use it as excuses for failure, or use as excuses for not trying to accomplish the things in life. I can't do that. I can't afford that. I can't do that. But then again, I think there are people, and I hope that I've been one of those, that, you take one on the chin and you just get back up and you say, bring it on. And I think that's kind of the way that life is. And I hope that, bye, see ya. Be careful. I think that I know that he had to work really hard, my father, that is, at becoming a business owner and all of that. And so, I would like to hope that he's proud of me, at least to some degree. Railroad Drug would not be here without Amanda. It's not, that's not even debatable. And that's probably on multiple levels. And I'll tell you why that is. You mentioned from its inception, and that's very much, very, very true, because she really kind of stayed on me. I had told her about wanting to do that, and she really stayed on me and told me I would regret it if I didn't. And and it's so scary to take that kind of. It's a financial leap. It is you're putting your family through some stressful times. It's because it's a time obligation, because Railroad Drug is my second wife, and it definitely treats me worse than the first. So, it is, she, even to this day, I mean, if it wasn't for Amanda, I probably would have closed Railroad Drug 100 times. Wow. I mean, she, and it's just because of, and it's not because it's doing poorly. It's just because there are times, I think, in business where you feel like things are unfair, especially in healthcare business, when you are requiring payments from insurance companies that kind of pay you when they want or take money away when they want. And it's just not a normal pay model out of a business. Like if you and I owned a restaurant, we buy so much and food costs so much, and our everything, any of ancillary products cost so much, and our overhead is this, and everything left is profit, right? It doesn't work that way in pharmacy. It's completely different than that, because the insurance companies dictate what you get. So it's very frustrating for me. And there have been plenty of times over the last decade where, you just come home and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And then she would say, are you unhappy? And I would say, no, I'm too frustrated. I can't do it. And she, it's that breath of fresh air that just, and she'll say, take a deep breath, relax, take a deep breath. Let's have a beer, sit down, relax for a minute, just sleep on it.
So encouraging.
And so grounded, and I think, and she, one thing that can be understated is how sound her faith is. And I think that, as Christians, we practice, we're practicing Catholics, but I mean, as Christians as a whole, I think that, for us, that faith journey is very involved in your business, as any big decision is. And there are times that I lose sight of that. It's so easy to lose sight of what's really important, because you get so caught up in how do I pay the electric bill, right? That you forget it'll be okay. And she's really great about
kind of bringing you around to refocus.
Whatever I need. There are times where I just need that
her to listen,
to put an arm around me and say, get it out. And then times where I need her to proverbially slap me across the face and stop whining. You can do this. And, she's great at both of those things. I feel very grateful just for her on so many levels. I mean, just not only that she's a wonderful wife, but she is just a phenomenal mother. And she's PTO president, and she helps me out here. And now she's getting ready to get certified to do gym training at the workout place. And she's been women's club president, and she does she is just
phenomenal.
Just an amazingly well-rounded human being, who is way better than I. I'm married way up, and I'm sure she thinks that multiple times a week. And of course, as a mom, you're so grateful for your kids. I mean, my 3 children, 2 daughters and a son sandwiched in between the 2, and they're all so different as, your boys are, it's, I've got my athlete who's trying to get into vet school, who's older. And then I've got my technologically, mechanically infatuated son. And then I've got my artsy Caroline, who's my baby girl. So, they have all made me a better man, in their own unique way. And I hope at some point, when I'm long gone, that they think that I contributed something positive to their life, because they sure have to me. But you mentioned your faith, and I think it's difficult at times to remember how grateful it is to be. It's easy to say thank you for my house, and thank you for my clothes and my food and the things which I think are important. But I think to be grateful for your faith, I think, is probably the one that I would say comes right after my wife and kids, and really probably before, if you want to be honest. I mean, because if you don't have the right kind of relationship with God, then you're going to have a hard time, in my opinion, with your other stuff. And as I've said, Amanda does a good job of reminding me of that when I'm on the ledge. But your son is a very good, and I've talked to him about this, he's just a very good example of when you talk about that calm demeanor, that it's not even that everything's going to be okay. It's that I never even got to the point where I was worried to begin with. It's that. And I've told him, I'm like, man, I wish I could be like you. What is that? Yeah. And he said, and he says, that's faith. That is, look, if it all goes wrong, this life is a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. I'm not going to starve. If I got to work, I'll work somewhere that'll put food on the table and put a roof over my head. Right. And so, and I love that. I love that mentality. I wish I could be like that. I'm the worrier. I'm the one who's always thinking 3 steps ahead of what's gonna, what's coming around the corner. What's gonna go wrong. Amanda is very much like Getty like that. Yeah. So I think you need a little of both. I think if you have too much of the never worrying, maybe, I've told Amanda, I'm like, you wouldn't even you and me alive right now if it wasn't for me worrying about everybody. And so, I think it's a good, it's a really good mix of both. And, but I think, obviously being thankful for all the other things in my life, but my faith and my family by far.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, if after listening to this interview, you don't rush down to railroad drug right this moment with your transferred prescription, well, you're nuts. Not only does Ken give out his personal cell phone number to help you at your time of need, he also has staff to hand deliver your meds to you. It does not get any better. And now for my higher ground takeaways. Number one, never underestimate the power of personal touch and service in all your relationships, both personal and professional. Number two, be available. Position yourself in your relationships to really see others, to listen to them, to engage them in meaningful ways. Be ready to help when there's a need. Number three, go ahead, take the risk. You may never know what adventure awaits you unless you take that leap. Number four, stay grounded in life. Stop whining. I loved how Ken reminded us just how important our attitude is when we hit a bump or two in the road. Take the hit on the chin, learn, and move on. Number five, accountability is obviously critical in the pharmacy biz, but it's also critical in our Christian walk. We need each other. Number six, keep God number one in your life. You won't be sorry. Realizing it's all small stuff to Him can be the pivot point to increasing our faith. And number seven, remember that God knows you by name. Do you know Him? Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you that you indeed know us by name, that you tend to us, and you even, quote, serve us by giving us your Son. I thank you that you are always available for us 24/7. Help us to remember that we have so much to be grateful for. Increase our faith and help us to learn more about you with each bump we may hit during our life here on earth. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Check out the show notes below for more information about Railroad Drug as well as the home place at Midway. Until next week, Dios primero y que Dios te bendiga. Ciao.